One Night Surprise Novel Audiobook. Chapter 1 to Chapter. It's hot. I feel so hot. Courtney wondered if it was because she had drunk too much as she felt hot all over. Then, she vaguely heard what she thought was the sound of the door being pushed open. When she forced herself to open her eyes and look toward the only light source, she saw a few people standing perfectly straight at the door with reverence. They were greeting a tall and erect figure that was walking toward them from the other end of the red carpet. The man's long legs came to a stop before he asked in a cold voice, "Have you confirmed that she is clean?" "Yes, master." "What are they saying?" "Who is that guy? Is he Isaac?" Courtney wanted to open her eyes wide to see the man carefully, but the room to the door was closed. Now, she couldn't see anything clearly. She could only hear the sound of someone's footsteps approaching her bed. Suddenly, a body with ice-cold skin leaned over her, and she couldn't help clinging to him. The man's body tensed up while lust flooded his eyes, kissing her red lips precisely in the darkness. He turned over and pressed his body onto hers, gaining the advantage over her. "It hurts," Courtney cried out in pain as her body arched. "It hurts. Isaac, can you not be together with her?" The man froze. This was the first time a woman called out another man's name in his bed. "Relax." The man's unfamiliar voice brought Courtney to her senses. "He isn't Isaac." "That's right, Isaac has hooked up with that so-called bestie of mine. So how could he possibly show up in my bed?" Who are you? Don't touch me." Courtney flailed her arms and resisted the man with all her might. He let out a grunt as her sharp fingernails seemed to have scratched his neck, and she appeared to have ripped something off his neck. Her pain slowly subsided as the pleasant sensation overwhelmed her. The increasingly passionate voices of a man and a woman could be frequently heard from the deluxe suite. Even so, the bodyguards who guarded the door still stood with serious expressions, as if nothing had happened. Courtney's body was drenched with sweat as she woke up with a start. It was a bright sunny day outside, yet her slim back was covered in a cold sweat. "I actually dreamed of that night again." Courtney breathed heavily while wiping the sweat off her face. She recalled the man's deep voice, his icy chest, his deep eyes that were staring at her. And she experienced the most mortifying night in her life 2 months ago. After all, she went to a bar and had drinks with somebody after stumbling upon the affair between her boyfriend and bestie. As a result, someone drugged her drink, and she was taken into a luxurious suite in a daze and robbed of her virginity. Courtney's cheeks burned. Not daring to think deeper, she hurriedly changed her clothes. While she was busy with her report in the laboratory, her junior came back with her lunch, and the faint smell of fish turned her stomach. Barf! Leaving her uncompleted experiment behind, Courtney rushed to the restroom and rested for a long time. "Based on your reaction, Courtney, could you be pregnant?" The junior's words seemed to hit a nerve in Courtney as her face turned even paler. Pregnant? There couldn't be such a coincidence. Could it? Could I get pregnant after sleeping with a man just once? However, the truth came as a slap in her face. The female doctor handed the medical report to her in the hospital and even made a special effort to point out where the fetus was. "Congratulations, Miss Hunter, you're indeed pregnant. The baby is now about 70 days old, and it's quite stable." Her words hit Courtney like a thunderbolt. She wobbled. It wasn't until she leaned against the wall with great difficulty that she kept her balance. I am really pregnant. But I have no idea who the baby's father is. Who is the guy that slept with me that night?" She paced up and down the hospital's corridor for a long time before finally bursting into the doctor's office once again. Doctor, I don't want this baby. I want to have an abortion." "What?" The smile on the doctor's face seemed to freeze at once, for she didn't expect this lady, who looked young and weak, to be so cruel. She couldn't help but advise, "Miss, Now that you're pregnant with the baby, it'd be a pity will it be if you get an abortion. I don't want this baby. Courtney tightened her grip on the doctor's arm. She said, as if pleading, I want to abort the baby now. Courtney took off her shoes and lay down on the operating table. Despite having prepared herself, she still felt freezingly cold. I can't have this baby. I am still an undergraduate, so I'll be looked down upon. I am sorry, baby. Courtney showed a hint of reluctance as she put her hand on her belly. Just when the surgery was about to begin, the door to the operating room was forcefully kicked open with a loud bang. Then, a group of men wearing black suits swarmed in, instantly crowding the whole operating room. Who are you guys? The doctor and nurses were startled by this unexpected situation. The scalpel dropped onto the operating table with a clatter, awaking Courtney. Before she could realize what was happening, a man came over and held her down right away before giving her a shot of a sedative. The doctor and nurses were stupefied by this series of events. The man who hadn't left yet took a thick pile of cash out of his pocket and tossed it to the doctor right away while saying coldly, "This woman has never come to your place." Got it? Gee, got it. The doctor and the few nurses trembled with fright. Courtney woke up from anesthesia in a daze to find herself in a luxurious bedroom. Coincidentally, someone pushed the door open and came in at this moment. The person who entered was a middle-aged man with an exquisitely made dish in his hands. Seeing Courtney looking at him warily, he greeted her with a smile. "You're awake, Miss Hunter." How did you know that my surname is Hunter?" Courtney raised her guard. This man knew who she was. Yet she didn't know him. "Why did you guys bring me here?" "Miss Hunter, what happened that night was an accident. They had arranged the wrong lady for that night," the butler said apologetically. "Our young master didn't want to pursue this matter. But we didn't expect you to get pregnant, Miss Hunter. But since you're pregnant, he must have the baby." Courtney instantly understood that the young master he was referring to must be the detestable man to whom she had lost her virginity. "Why? What gives him the right to do so? Tell your young master that I'll abort my baby as I want to." The butler had no choice but to hand Courtney the newspaper that he had brought with him. "Why don't you take a look at this first?" Courtney didn't want to take the newspaper from him, but she inadvertently caught sight of an eye-catching title on the newspaper. It read, "The Hunter Group exposed for using fake materials. How should the Hunter Group solve this crisis after its shares plummeted this morning?" Upon that, Courtney snatched the newspaper from the butler. After reading the news report, her face turned as white as a sheet, and she glared at the butler furiously. "This was your young master's doing, wasn't it? How could your young master be so shameless?" The butler didn't turn a hair. "Miss Hunter, the Hunters will be alright as long as you give birth to the baby. Not only that, but you'll also get 20 million. I believe you want the Hunters to go bankrupt. Miss Hunter, will you?" Courtney clenched the newspaper hard while the butler silently handed a document to her. Looking at the document, Courtney hesitated for a long time. In the end, she gritted her teeth and made up her mind, saying, "I'll sign it." The butler was obviously satisfied after getting the signed document. He said, "Please rest assured, Miss Hunter, our young master will certainly fulfill his promise once the baby is born safely." 8 months later. Rumble. The sudden clap of thunder outside woke Courtney from her sleep with a startle. Courtney only felt unbearable pain in her belly. Summoning up all her strength, she reached out her hand and rang the little bell on the nightstand. Then, everything went black before her eyes, and she fell unconscious. "It's here. The baby has come out." Courtney gasped for breath as she vaguely heard a baby's loud and clear cries. She opened her eyes with some difficulty, but the nurse had carried the baby away before she could see what it looked like. Several minutes later, She was transferred to the ward, and the butler came in. Courtney was in so much pain that she was still clutching the sheets. "Where is the baby?" "The baby has been sent to young Master S. place. He is a healthy boy," answered the butler. Then, he put an envelope on the cabinet. "Here is a check for 20 million. Thank you, Miss Hunter." With that, he got ready to leave. "No, please let me see the baby," flustered. Courtney threw back the sheets and was about to scramble out of bed. "It is my baby no matter what." However, she was too weak, so she fell onto the floor right away. She could only watch the butler leaving as the spasms of pain in her belly caused her to cry out in agony, "Please, let me see the baby." Several minutes later, a nurse came to deliver medicine to Courtney. Seeing that she was lying on the floor, the nurse quickly helped her up, only to find her hand covered in blood. The nurse's face instantly turned deathly pale, as she ran out of the room in a fluster. Courtney, who was slipping into a coma, could vaguely hear her saying in panic, "Bad news, Dr. Gill. This pregnant woman has another baby in her womb." 5 years later, a young man who emerged from Farnville International Airport as arrival passage along with the crowd was very conspicuous with his black shirt and pants. His lips were pressed together under his brown sunglasses, giving him an unwelcoming appearance that deterred strangers away from him. Seeing that he emerged from the passage, his assistant, who had been waiting outside, hurriedly went up to him and picked up his suitcase. He asked cautiously, "President Duncan, would you like to go back to the mansion first? Little Master hasn't eaten anything for a day." "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" The man's glacial voice showed signs that he was getting angry, causing the assistant's legs to tremble. Everyone in the entire Duncan family knew that Little Master, Jordan Duncan, was dearest to Alexander Duncan's heart. Alexander doted on him so much that he was sometimes overcautious with the latter. Alexander didn't dare to raise his voice even while talking to Jordan, which showed how much he spoiled the latter. However, despite his apprehension, the assistant braced himself and explained, "You were going to Chicago to sign an important contract, so I didn't call you, lest your work be held up. But I didn't expect Little Master to go on a hunger strike for a day." Suddenly, the man stopped in his tracks, took off his sunglasses, and looked at his assistant. His eyes were dark black in color, but they gradually turned green with a speed visible to the naked eye. Not only that, but the temperature of his surroundings seemed to have dropped bit by bit. Upon catching sight of this, the assistant went so weak at the knees that he nearly collapsed. President Duncan's pupils turn green whenever he gets angry, so he must be angry right now. "Oh, no, I am going to lose my job. Since when could you make decisions on my behalf?" "Huh?" His sound sounded a bit more chilling than a moment ago. I am sorry," the assistant hung his head, ready to accept his fate. Just then, a small piece of chocolate rolled across the crowd and came to a halt next to Alexander's shoes. At the sight of the chocolate wrapper, Alexander knitted his brows before he bent down and picked up the piece of chocolate. "That is my chocolate, mister." A soft and sweet voice rang as a little girl ran up to him. She was about 4 to 5 years old. Since she was short, she had to raise her head to look at Alexander even if he squatted down. Her eyes were big, with black pupils that looked as bright and sparkling as agates, and they shone with a kind of purity that was unique to kids. Her innocent appearance made Alexander's heart skip a beat, so he fixed his eyes on her. "It is strange. I am meeting this little girl for the first time, but why does she give me such a strong feeling? As if we'd known each other in the first place." Tina Hunter tilted her head to both sides before extending her tender hand to Alexander. "Mister, please buy chocolates yourself if you want to eat one. I have only 3 pieces of it, so I can't give you any." Her cute and sweet-sounding words seemed to have caused Alexander's frosty and gloomy expression to somewhat soften. He crouched down and gave the chocolate back to her, asking, "You like this brand of chocolate?" "What?" The assistant beside him was stunned right away. "This is so strange. Doesn't President Duncan dislike every child other than Little Master? Why would he crouch down and speak to this little girl in a gentle tone that he normally uses while talking to Little Master? This is so unbelievable." Tina nodded vigorously and gave a sweet smile, showing her two super adorable white canines. "Do you like this brand of chocolate too, mister?" "I don't like it, but my boy likes it very much," replied Alexander. Then, he took a box of chocolate of the same brand out of his shopping bag. "I've bought many boxes of them for my boy, so I can give you a box." Whoa! Tina's eyes brightened at the sight of the box full of chocolate, but she hesitated. But mommy said I can't accept others' gifts casually." Although Tina's black and bright eyes rolled about, moving close to Alexander on tiptoe, she planted a smacker on his cheek before taking the box of chocolate. "Now I can take it this way." Alexander was stunned. Surprisingly, his thin lips curved up into a faint smile. The assistant wiped his sweat away. After checking the time, he reminded Alexander, "President Duncan, it's time to go." "Okay. Goodbye, little one." Alexander got up and left with his assistant right away. "Goodbye, mister." Tina waved her little hand at the cold and aloof figure from behind. "Wow, this mister is so handsome and kind." "Tina Hunter." Tina puckered up her little face upon hearing the angry voice of the woman behind her. "Oh, no, I am done for," she thought to herself. The next second, the woman walked up to Tina, raised her slim hand, and gave Tina a hard spank with an angry expression. "Didn't I tell you to wait for me in the same place? Why did you run around?" "Ouch! Don't hit me, mommy, it hurts." Tina was actually pretending since it didn't hurt at all. Putting her hands on her bottom, she explained aggrievedly, "I dropped my chocolate, so I went to pick it up." Seeing the box of chocolate in her arms, Courtney took it from the little girl. "Where did you get this?" Tina laced her fingers together. "A handsome mister gave this to me because he thought that I was cute." "He gave it to you? Why didn't you simply leave with him?" Courtney got even angrier. She raised her hand and was about to give Tina another spank, but the latter cried out and covered her butt quickly. Pulling her old trick, the little girl blinked her watery eyes and stared at Courtney. "I know I was wrong, mommy. I'll stand facing the wall for 3 minutes later." 10 minutes. Tina pretended to weep. 10 minutes is too long. Don't you feel sorry for me, mommy? The time will be extended if you bargain again. Tina didn't dare to utter a sound anymore. Puckering up her lips, she obediently held Courtney's hand and left with the latter. Farmville City had undergone so many unbelievable changes when Courtney came back after 5 years. Rows upon rows of high-rise buildings were everywhere. She got up early the next day. After setting Tina down at home, she hailed a taxi at the gate of her neighborhood right away to go to Sunhill Enterprise downtown. This day was the day of Sunhill Enterprise's quarterly job interview, so people were hurrying to and fro in front of the revolving glass door. "Hey, stop! Wait a minute!" Seeing that the elevator door was about to close, Courtney ran there in high-heeled shoes. Then, she gritted her teeth and dashed into the elevator before the elevator door closed. "I am so sorry, I am here to Since she came in too quickly, her high heels broke, causing her to fall over right away. Courtney's hands seemed to have touched some silky smooth fabric. As she subconsciously caught hold of the fabric, her face pressed against the man's body, and the overwhelming smell of pheromones made her feel dizzy. Someone around them exclaimed, "Who are you? Why are you taking the executive's elevator?" "I am sorry. I am here for a job interview, and I am in a rush," Courtney answered while trying to get up. Unexpectedly, she moved too hastily, causing her long wavy hair to get twisted around the man's shirt button. Her hair was pulled so hard that her scalp hurt. While she fell again, she happened to place her hands on the man's chest. As if she had gotten an electric shock, Courtney uttered hurriedly, I am sorry. I am not touching you on purpose. The elevator was suddenly silent for 2 seconds. PFFFFFT. The next instant, several people in the elevator didn't know whether to laugh or to frown. However, the frosty expression of this big shot made them quickly cover their mouths and forcibly hold back their laughter. Alexander visibly froze for a second. He couldn't help knitting his brows, for he had never run into such a ridiculous situation. I am sorry. I am really sorry. See, can you lend me a hand? Courtney desperately tried to free her hair from the entanglement, but her hair got twisted more tightly around the button when she moved. She was so nervous that her palms were sweating. Alexander couldn't help feeling that this lady felt strongly familiar, but he had never seen her before. Her tender hands kept scratching at him, as if trying to arouse him. Strangely, despite the fact that he suffered from serious misophonia, he wasn't repulsed. After being silent for a second, he lowered his head and unwound her hair from the button with his thin and long fingers at her request. Don't move, relax. His voice sounded cool and distant. This voice sounds so familiar. Courtney was stunned. She suddenly recalled that night in the hotel 5 years ago, when she opened her eyes in a daze. She couldn't see clearly what the man looked like in the dim light, but she caught a faint glimpse of his rose-colored lips. He told her to relax, only to thrust his member into her even harder after that. Courtney instantly went red in the face as those erotic scenes crossed her mind. Oh, my God! Am I pining for man? Why would I recall all these? Thanks. Not getting a response. She could no longer resist her curiosity, so she quietly looked at the man. He was dressed in an expensive handmade suit that set off his attractive long legs. He looked noble and cool, and his tightly compressed lips, though good-looking, showed a hint of aloofness. Miss. His assistant quickly came to his senses, recalling that Courtney had just thrown herself at Alexander. He said coldly, what you said about being in a rush was probably an excuse. You just wanted to accost him, didn't you? Accost? Courtney was still confused when the man next to her lowered his head and glanced at her from the corner of his eye. Many women had come and gone around him over these years. They had indeed racked their brains to get close to him, but he hadn't been interested in women since that incident 5 years ago. The only woman he'd ever had a one-night stand with was perhaps the woman he had slept with by mistake that same year. She was also the biological mother of his son. As Alexander recalled this lady's movements just now, which apparently appeared to be a deliberate attempt to come into contact with him, the steelness and disgust in his eyes grew. I was nearly fooled by the woman in front of me, he thought to himself. Courtney was displeased. What's with that look in your eyes? I said I am in a rush. I have just thanked him from the bottom of my heart for getting me out of the fix just now. The man no longer wanted to pay attention to her, though. He ordered indifferently, Josh, press the floor button. Josh, his assistant, pressed the elevator button to the nearest floor. When the elevator door opened, he asked Courtney to go out. Lady, please go down from here, and don't pull such tricks again next time. Please? I really wasn't. Courtney wanted to explain herself, but the assistant asked her to exit the elevator with an uncompromising attitude. Courtney clenched her teeth and gave Alexander a glare. As she exited the elevator, she muttered, who does he think he is? It's so funny that they accused me of accosting him. His skin looks so fair and clear, one can tell at a glance that he must be a nightclub star. Her voice wasn't low enough, so Josh looked horrified upon hearing what she said. Is this interviewee courting death? How could she say that our president Duncan here is a nightclub star? Josh's limbs trembled due to the forbidding aura that emanated from the man next to him. Not daring to look at the man, he said in a quavering voice, "I'll call the security guards right away and tell them to come up and handle this. That's too much of a hassle." Alexander withdrew his gaze as the elevator door closed. For some reason, he found himself interested in this lady as her words were still ringing in his ears. How could she accuse me of being a nightclub star after getting her hair twisted around my shirt button on purpose? Interesting. He narrowed his eyes, but his voice sounded deeper and colder than it was earlier. He wanted to see if this lady could shine at her job interview. "Call George and tell him that I'll be there for the interview at 10:00 am. "Yes, President Duncan." When Courtney arrived at the reception room, she caught sight of the huge crowd of people. She suddenly found herself under great stress. 4 more people than she had imagined were applying for the job. She found a random place and stood next to a few conversing women. "Hey, did you hear that President Duncan will be here for today's interview too?" "Wow, really? I heard that President Duncan has a son that is unmarried but very handsome. Is he interviewing the applicants to look for a mother for his son?" "That is possible. But it is rumored that he is impotent otherwise. Why wouldn't he have a regular female companion after such a long time? There are countless gossips about him. Though, do the women frown at him because he is impotent?" The women at the scene still felt tempted after their lively discussion. As long as they could marry into a wealthy family, it didn't matter even if they had to be a stepmother or if he was impotent. Courtney couldn't help rolling her eyes in disdain upon seeing how these women competed with each other to display their charm. Company bosses who have kids are generally over 30 years old, and they must have beer bellies. But since they raise so rich, do they really have to choose a stepmother for their children from the interviewees? He must be choosing a sexy secretary for himself. Courtney was subconsciously disgusted with this future boss. "Courtney Hunter. I am here." Courtney thrust her way through the crowd when she heard her name being called. After taking a deep breath, she pushed the door and went inside. 5 interviewers were sitting right at the center of the stage, and the interviewer on the right side was saying something to the man beside him with a look of reverence. Courtney was stunned. Isn't he the man in the elevator? She held her breath at the sight of the ingratiating looks of those around the man. "What should I do?" Courtney hesitated. "This guy's job position seems higher than everyone else's. Is he a manager, a director, or a—" Alexander seemed to have noticed something. He raised his head and shot Courtney an indifferent glance. Then, he bowed his head and asked, as if he had never seen her before, "So you graduated from Wharton?" Courtney had a hard time finding her voice. I haven't gotten my graduation certificate yet." She successfully received the reply letter for the job interview only by summoning her courage to write in the name of the university she graduated from. She really needed this job a lot. The interviewer was startled. "Do you mean that your information is fake?" He quickly turned to Alexander next to him and apologized. "I am sorry, President Duncan. Our verification process—" Alexander gestured to him to keep quiet with a wave of his hand. Then, he looked at the woman below the stage with a cold gaze. "Do you mean that you applied for the job based on your working experience in Melody Hotel in Germany alone?" His voice sounded even colder. "Have you read the job requirements?" Then, he tossed the documents to her with an indifferent expression as he had seen through her lies long ago. "Get out." Dejected, Courtney picked up the documents and turned around to leave. As she left, she heard the man speaking in a cold voice behind her. "Don't play useless tricks. No company would hire someone who faked even their personal information." Courtney stopped in her tracks in defiance. "Isn't he this man a little too holier than thou?" She turned around, went back, and slapped the documents on the table. The sound she made was so loud that the interviewers around her looked at her and gasped in shock. How could someone dare to toss things in front of President Duncan? Is she tired of living? Thanks for listening to the Bravonovel audiobook. Welcome to download the Bravonovel app. Read the novel One Night Surprise online and get the latest updates. Please see the video introduction for the novel details page and app download address.